Who are second-tier thinkers? This is a response video to the Future Thinkers video and interview with Ken Wilber on Spiral Dynamics second tier. The YouTube algorithm recommends this video again and again. If you look for anything Spiral Dynamics, or if you ever have looked for anything Spiral Dynamics, this video will be recommended to you multiple times. It was an interview with Ken Wilber 3 years ago and has now 55,000 clicks. So this seems to be also a topic that goes through people's minds, but it doesn't really answer the question. The question is, who are second-tier thinkers? And Ken Wilber already intimates in a very polite way that this is not the correct question, because in his mind a second-tier thinker would be someone who thinks in a unified way and doesn't polarize, which is something that first-tier thinkers do. They polarize, and for them their own fame is the most important thing. From yellow onwards, you think in a more unified, global, universal way, but it can still be polarized. That's the big trouble, because thinking itself is a polarizing action or reaction. So in Spiral Dynamics yellow, turquoise and coral, you can still think in a polarizing way and can still be interested in conspiracy theories and justice and so on. So all this green revolutionary stuff will carry onwards in many people. If the head is strongly in green, it will carry onwards until coral. So my response is actually this: it's the wrong question. Who are second-tier thinkers? There are many second-tier thinkers. Most famous philosophers and psychologists are second-tier thinkers, but they're still thinking. And that's the problem. Thinking is not the solution. This is a question posed by someone who thinks that thinking is the solution, that technology or intelligence is the solution. Don't mix up intelligence with awareness, or intelligence with enlightenment, with consciousness. They're two different animals. Actually, intelligence can be an obstacle. As you know, I'm a fan of Carlos Castaneda's books, and there you can see very clearly that his intelligence doesn't help him at all. It's an obstacle. It makes him rationalize everything, and thus he misses the message. Spiral Dynamics second tier is not about thinking. That's not the focus here. It's about consciousness. It's about the soul, or whatever you want to call it. It's about the development of intuition, to get into contact with a higher source than your own thinking, your own intellect. That's not a very high source. That's often just bullshit. That's brainwashing. It's stuff, opinions you have adopted from others. The ancient Greeks, especially the Stoics, they made a very, very precise distinction between opinion and knowledge. And most of what we think is knowledge is actually opinions. Knowledge is something else. Knowledge is direct knowledge. And for that you need intuition. And intuition really starts to take over in Spiral Dynamics teal, or violet as Ken Wilber calls it. And here we have the next problem. There are some people like me who say the second tier has 6 colors, and some like Ken Wilber who say they don't. For Ken Wilber, the second tier is mostly yellow and turquoise. So in that case, yes, second tier thinkers, yellow and turquoise, are still they trust their thinking. And the whole thing of turquoise is to figure out what is the difference between thinking and intuition, or also imagination, because in turquoise you often imagine stuff that is not real. So in what Ken Wilber calls the third tier, indigo, violet, ultraviolet and clear light, thinking is definitely not what it is about. In yellow and turquoise, yes, it's still about thinking, but it will get you nowhere. If you're talking about 6 colors in the second tier, then the first 3 are still susceptible to thinking. The last 3 have given it up. Thinking doesn't either happen anymore or doesn't matter anymore in the last 3 colors, which Ken Wilber calls violet, ultraviolet and clear light, and I call teal, plum and aubergine, which are the colors that Peter Mary suggested 20 years or so ago, and why change them if there are names for it? So if you look at examples of people who are centered in the last 3 colors of the second tier, or in Ken Wilber's third tier, like Eckhart Tolle, for example, is always a good showcase, then you can clearly see it's not about thinking. Or if they think, Jade McKenna is another example, if they think, then they really use the intellect to its full potential. You don't stop somewhere and say, okay, now I got it, and it's just some intermediary solution. You have to really, if you use your thinking, you have to really use it to the very end, and then invariably you arrive at the same solution as Plato did already 2,500 years ago, that the reality we usually experience is not it. There's something else. The cave metaphor. If you're living in the cave, nothing really matters because you're not seeing the real world, or only a very small part of it. You have to get outside of the cave and see the sun, where all the light is coming from. That's your aim. And that's not thinking anymore. It's seeing. There's no point in sitting in the cave and thinking about it, how it might be outside of the cave. You have to go outside of the cave and then see. Thinking about it is not enough. That is why the old Vedic masters called themselves seers. So the question really should be, who are the second tier seers? Or who are the second tier intuits? Who has permanent access to intuition, seeing and direct knowledge? And then what? Yeah. Let's assume you do find this out and have a list of people who qualify. Then what? Who the fuck cares? It's about you. Do you have access to intuition? That's the interesting question here. Yeah? Not so much others. Stop thinking, and especially stop thinking about others. And the only way to stop thinking is to realize that thinking is not the answer to your problems. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Thank you to all my patrons, and thank you for joining me as a patron, and see you soon.